Let's talk about the polar vortex, a term that sounds dramatic, almost like something out of a science fiction movie, but it's actually a real and important part of our planet's weather system. The polar vortex is simply a huge area of cold, low-pressure air spinning high above the North Pole, forming a kind of invisible icy crown at the top of the world. Think of it as a giant, icy top, always circling the Arctic, spinning relentlessly. It's a normal, even necessary part of Earth's climate system, helping to regulate temperatures across the globe. This swirling mass sits in the stratosphere, about 10 to 30 miles above us, higher than most airplanes fly, held in place by powerful winds that act like a fence, keeping the cold air contained. In winter, as the Arctic grows colder and darker, the vortex strengthens and expands, becoming even more pronounced as the sun disappears for months at a time. Why does this matter? Because the polar vortex can influence our winter weather far to the south, sometimes reaching all the way into the United States, Europe, and Asia. When it's strong, it keeps the cold bottled up near the pole, acting like a lid that prevents frigid air from escaping. But if it weakens or gets disrupted by things like sudden warming events or shifts in wind patterns, frigid Arctic air can spill southward, bringing sudden cold snaps, snowstorms, and icy blasts to places that aren't used to such extreme weather. The polar vortex isn't a storm, it's more like the conductor of winter's orchestra, guiding cold air masses around the globe and setting the stage for the weather we experience. Understanding the vortex helps us connect the dots between the Arctic and our own winter forecasts, showing how events thousands of miles away can affect our daily lives. It's the first step in predicting what kind of winter we might have, whether we'll see mild temperatures or brace for deep freezes and heavy snow. So, let's dive deeper and see how this icy giant shapes our weather, and why keeping an eye on the polar vortex is so important for understanding winter's wild side. So, how does the polar vortex form? Let's break down the science behind this powerful weather phenomenon and see how it shapes our winters. It all starts with the dramatic temperature difference between the warm, sun-soaked equator and the frigid, icy poles. This difference is what sets the stage for the polar vortex to develop. The contrast in temperature creates a pressure gradient, which acts like a force, driving powerful winds that swirl high above the Arctic. These winds form a vast, spinning ring of cold air, the polar vortex itself. In winter, the Arctic experiences 24 hours of darkness, known as the polar night. With no sunlight to warm the region, the temperature gap between the poles and the equator grows even larger, making the vortex stronger and more intense. A strong vortex acts like a barrier, keeping the coldest air locked up in the far north. But it's closely linked to the jet stream, a fast-moving river of air that snakes around the globe, separating cold Arctic air from warmer southern air. When the vortex is stable and spinning rapidly, the jet stream flows in a relatively straight path, keeping Arctic air contained and preventing it from spilling southward. But if the vortex weakens or becomes unstable, the jet stream starts to wobble and meander, creating large dips that allow frigid Arctic air to escape and surge south into lower latitudes. Imagine the vortex as a spinning bowl. When it spins fast, everything stays inside. But when it slows down and wobbles, cold air spills out, reaching places far from the Arctic Circle. This spillover is what brings sudden, dramatic cold snaps and unexpected snowstorms to regions that are usually much milder in winter. That's why meteorologists and climate scientists keep a close eye on the polar vortex each winter, using advanced technology and satellite data to track its every move. The strength and shape of the vortex can make or break our winter weather, determining whether we get a mild season or face extreme cold. The polar vortex and the jet stream work together, setting the stage for winter's drama and influencing weather patterns across entire continents. Understanding this powerful connection is key to predicting cold outbreaks and preparing for whatever winter has in store. What happens when the polar vortex gets disrupted? Sometimes it weakens or splits, often due to powerful weather systems sending energy upward. This disturbance makes the vortex wobble, breaking down the fence that holds in the cold. The jet stream below becomes wavy, opening doors for Arctic air to surge south. This is when we get a polar vortex outbreak, prolonged, dangerously cold weather far from the pole. Remember, the vortex itself stays up north. It's the cold air that escapes. These outbreaks aren't new, but they can bring record lows, heavy snow, and major disruptions. Power grids, travel, and public health can all be affected. That's why scientists track the vortex so closely, to give us time to prepare. When you hear, the polar vortex is coming, it means a piece of that cold air is heading our way. It's not a storm, but a shift in the atmosphere's pattern. Understanding this helps us brace for winter's extremes. As of early October 2025, the polar vortex is in its usual autumn transition, currently weak, but expected to strengthen as Arctic nights grow longer. This seasonal spin-up means the vortex will soon do a better job containing the coldest air near the pole. For now, a stronger vortex reduces the risk of major Arctic outbreaks in the US. It's a normal part of the atmosphere settling into winter mode. Don't be alarmed by headlines. The vortex stirs every year as winter approaches. The real question is whether it will become strong and stable or weak and wobbly later in the season. Long-range models hint at a typical start to winter, but it's too soon to predict January and February. For now, expect a normal transition, with above-average temperatures likely in the southeast. The vortex sets the stage, but doesn't dictate every detail of our weather. What does a typical winter look like in South Carolina? It's a question that surprises many people who aren't from the region, because winter here is quite different from what you might expect in other parts of the country. Generally, winters are mild compared to much of the United States, but that doesn't mean it never gets cold. Every so often, a cold snap will sweep through, reminding everyone that winter can still pack a punch, even in the South. Average winter temperatures typically range from the mid-40s in the upstate to around 50 degrees along the coast. These averages mean that most days are cool but not freezing, making outdoor activities possible even in the heart of winter. January is usually the coldest month, with Greenville averaging about 42.5 degrees and Charleston near 50 degrees. These numbers reflect the overall mildness, but also include the occasional chilly morning or brisk evening. These averages include both the pleasant, sunny days and the rare, sudden cold snaps that can catch people off guard. Snow is a rare sight for most of the state. Many areas see little to none each year. However, the upstate averages about 4.7 inches annually, usually from just 1 or 2 snow events, which can be a big deal for local communities. Even a few inches of snow can cause major disruptions, from school closures to traffic delays, since the region isn't equipped for frequent winter storms. So, a normal winter in South Carolina means cool but not frigid temperatures, infrequent snow, and plenty of sunshine. Many days are bright and comfortable, perfect for enjoying the outdoors. Residents are used to wearing light jackets or sweaters, not heavy coats or Arctic gear. For most, winter is more about layering than bundling up. When we talk about a colder than normal winter, it's always in comparison to these mild averages, so even a small dip in temperature can feel significant. Just a few degrees colder can mean more frost on the grass, icy windshields in the morning, and a higher chance for wintry weather that locals aren't used to dealing with. Understanding this mild baseline helps put weather forecasts in perspective, so you know what to expect and how to prepare. In the South, even small changes in winter weather can have a big impact, making it important to stay informed and ready for whatever the season brings. The first frost marks the true start of winter for South Carolina gardeners and farmers. In the upstate, the average first frost is around November 5th or 6th. In Columbia, it's closer to November 12th. And on the coast, it can be late November or even December. These dates are based on decades of weather records and serve as a reliable benchmark. This year, with a mild start expected, the first frost should arrive on time, or a bit later than average. No early Arctic blasts are on the horizon, so gardeners can stick to their usual timeline. Local geography plays a big role in frost timing across the state. Keep an eye on the forecast as November approaches. So, what are experts predicting for this winter in South Carolina? The Old Farmer's Almanac forecasts a colder than normal season for the Southeast. The coldest periods are expected in mid to late December, early and late January, and early February. This means more days with highs in the 30s and 40s, and more nights below freezing. Precipitation may be lower overall, but snowfall could be above normal, especially if storms hit during cold spells. This setup is linked to the potential for a weakened polar vortex later in winter. If the vortex wobbles, Arctic air could plunge south, matching the almanac's coldest predictions. It's a classic recipe for an impactful winter in the southeast. Stay tuned for updates as the season unfolds. Snow is rare in South Carolina, but this winter could be different. The upstate averages about 4.7 inches per year, while the rest of the state usually sees much less. The almanac predicts above normal snowfall, especially in late January for northern areas. If a storm arrives when Arctic air is in place, we could see more snow than usual. Even a single event can cause major disruptions, especially in the upstate. Long-range snow forecasts are tricky. A degree or two can mean rain, ice, or snow. Still, the stage is set for a potentially memorable winter. Watch day-to-day forecasts for details as each storm develops. This could be a winter to remember for snow lovers. To sum up, the polar vortex is a normal part of our atmosphere, but its strength can shape our winter. Right now, it's strengthening as usual, so no immediate Arctic outbreaks are expected. South Carolina should see mild weather and a typical first frost in early November. But long-range forecasts point to a colder, possibly snowier winter, especially in December through February. If the polar vortex weakens later, Arctic air could surge south, bringing deep freezes and snow. Understanding the vortex helps us prepare, not panic. For South Carolinians, now's the time to check your heating, protect your pipes, and find your winter coat. Stay tuned to local forecasts as winter unfolds. This year could bring more winter drama than usual, and that's your weather outlook.